Bit of a story that I think really hasn't resonated as much as perhaps it should is that weird explosion up in country Victoria. We were very lucky not to lose police in that explosion. There were two members of the SOG injured. One was literally blown off his feet and suffered perforated eardrums, but the second fellow received pretty serious shrapnel wounds, and if he wasn't wearing a helmet, almost certainly he'd be dead. Let's go back. The fellow's name is Glenn, known as the Colonel, Saunders. Bit of a eccentric up there. He was a explosive expert, a licensed one, and eventually lost that licence. And so the authorities went up and took some explosives, but obviously didn't get the lot. Plus he was so good he could make his own. So the locals up there just see him as a bit of a, well, not a nutter, but eccentric. And then his wife dies and he becomes more and more eccentric, and finally turns up to visit his mother in hospital wearing a bomb. Now, usually you're not even allowed to use a mobile phone, let alone a bomb, in a hospital. I don't know if they have a sign up. I think it's a given. No bombs.
Is that so? Is it literally says there's no need for a sign? Is there for a bomb?
I think I think it's a given.
Did anyone in the hospital find that at all a tad disconcerting when they saw a visitor coming in wearing a bomb? Well,
enough for the police to be notified. Now, the SOG and the bomb disposal people went up, and they didn't even get a chance to do negotiating, and the SOG were in their heavily armoured van, and they were just looking with binoculars, obviously, to see what this character was wearing. Was it a different device? Was it an explosive device? And then all hell broke loose with three massive explosions, and like boom, 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 in three different dwellings or buildings. Now, the amount of explosives, it absolutely destroyed these premises.
You saw the photos. It was there was nothing there, was there?
And then virtually straight away, his bomb that he was wearing went off, which effectively vaporised him.
And this is the same bomb that he was in the hospital with?
Yeah. And
so the bomb, it's interesting, the bomb was the reason why the police ended up there, was it?
Exactly. To say, what is this character actually doing? And they didn't know whether it was real or not. Well, they found out in a hurry because it was bigger than Guy Fawkes and pretty sophisticated. And I understand it had more than one detonating devices. So if the police had, say, rushed him and brought him to the ground, it would have gone off. I'm speculating, imagine it could have been something on a sort of bubble float arrangement. So if you go from vertical to horizontal, it'd go off. They had all these things, but they don't know whether he was luring police there to do it, whether he panicked, or whether in fact it was an accident. But they still believe there's literally truckloads of explosives up there.
So, Sly, is that as close as the soggies that got injured, was that as close as they got? So they were literally at a distance watching, and it was still at that point they were injured, or had they come in afterwards and there was more explosions?
No, they were at the cordon. They were setting up a cordon.
Wow.
And if they were out of the van, God knows how many we would have lost. And that's so they're all up there with the bomb experts now going, virtually blade of grass, because wondering whether they're booby traps there, which is an added thing that the police now have to look at when they do speed and ice labs, is man traps, where devices can be set up within the labs, not necessarily to get the police, but to get other crooks who might be doing a run through.
But Sly, the thought that what damage they could have done at that hospital.
Well, it would have blown the hospital totally up if you saw the...
Would it have blown it up?
Yeah.
Would it?
Yeah.
Would it?
Yeah.
And no one knew the reason why he wore the bomb to the hospital?
No, he was visiting his mother and he'd taken to wearing it a lot. And I think he may well have been wandering around town doing the grocery.
It reminds us, doesn't it? You don't always, there's eccentric behaviour and there's criminal behaviour. When you talk about that explosives licence was taken away, locals say that over the last, however long since his wife had died, he'd become a bit more eccentric and there'd been more of these explosions. If that was the case, had police been to the property in that time to sort of say, hey, you can't be doing this? Or do you think people just forgive it because that's that guy who's a little bit strange and we forgive that?
I think, that's one of the wonderful things about country towns, and he probably got incrementally worse. And if somebody had arrived wearing a bomb, for example, all hell would have broken loose. But because it's the Colonel, and the Colonel's been known to do all this sort of erratic behaviour.
And which is the country way as well, is it not?